Welcome to our press conference on the 2007 Hollywood Writers Report. I will make my comments brief because as I read this report, every minute that goes by, I become less and less employable. Hollywood is given an important task to tell America's stories, often to tell the world's stories. When these stories are told without women, when they are told without people of color, without writers with disabilities, without writers of a certain age, then our task is incomplete and change is needed.
The stories we tell are only as diverse as the writers who tell them. Diversity is not only good for writers, it is good for Hollywood. And in this particular case, what's good for Hollywood is actually good for the nation at large. And we really are all in this together.
The 2007 Hollywood Writers Report is the sixth in a series of reports released by the Writers Guild examining employment and earnings trends for writers in the Hollywood industry. The current report, as you've heard so far, tells an all too familiar story. Only minimal progress has been made in diversifying the core of writers working in film and television. Second, in a few instances, women and minority writers have actually lost ground relative to their male and white counterparts.
Here's a frustration. We are tired of being victims all the time. We are heroes in our own right. We are in control of our own lives. We're not just prostitutes, illegal immigrants, martial artists.
I always felt it was important to have a real range of voices to write for that cast and to bring out the various issues that different members of society face. I think that we need to have various writers, both of color, of different sexual persuasions that we've had on our show, older writers, so that we can learn from each other.
It's critical for what we do is to have as many voices in that room as possible.
Yeah. What should we expect of the shows that are in production, the writing staffs, the showrunners, as it relates to the stories they tell and the way the writing corps looks?
We should expect that they're really going to hire people, not just educators. We happen to be the best educated people in the nation in terms of writing programs. The talent is out there. It is a willingness of showrunners to say, we're going to do this.
The networks really are in the forefront. They need to be in the forefront to do this, to identify writers for us, and then we can work with them and develop them as successful writers.
Every showrunner, myself included, what we want the most are people who can tell multiple stories.
I've worked at CBS and at Fox and at ABC. NBC is the only network that I know of, I mean, it's been a while since I was there, where they actually go all the way to say, we will actually pay for a writer that you have identified through this program, and it'll be off your budget, and that can completely make a difference.
They need to insist to the networks, and it's the networks. They can blame the agents, they can blame this. It's the network. Come on. They're the ones that are writing out the checks, so it's got to be them that do that.
The guys writing the checks have to be held accountable, and then the guys doing the hiring have to be held accountable. And I do think that with the numbers from this report, that we do need to look at some truly tangible set goals. I know the Multicultural Coalition we've been talking about, we had a memorandum of understanding with the networks. We're looking at revisiting that, and within that I think we need to look at establishing those goals.
You can take the intellectual point of view and say, look, this makes sense. From a total financial point of view, you really can have more successful shows by having people of color on your shows and people of color writers, but they don't do it. So it's like, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And so I think there really is a lot of resistance there. I think there's the people who are in power want to hold on to that. I think they're resistant to try to include more people because they think they're giving some of their power away.
What we are looking at is what we consider structural racism. We know that individual racism has been dealt with. We know institutional racism has been dealt with by advocacy groups, so that, you know, it's been outlawed in many ways. But what we're finding is we have a real structural racism problem, especially in Hollywood, more than almost any other industry, where it kind of tends to be business as usual. The marketplace is there, the intention is there, so what is that final thing to push this over the edge?
Everybody's got to step up to the plate, you know, and it starts with the Guild also saying something. We are already there. The networks are beginning to go in that direction, but it's going to take all of us at one time to change the environment as it is right now.
Because we keep talking about the writers and we talk about some of these programs and all that. With the programs, sometimes we find there seems to be almost a built-in prejudice. You know, oh, this is the guy who got in because it was extra money, meaning in some way they wouldn't have gotten in on their own merit if somebody hadn't put up extra money. But people who kind of get into the assistant writing arena and kind of prove themselves and support the writers that are there, especially for the younger, you know, writers coming in, that seemed to be something that they all applauded. So, you know, I would say what we're looking at again is the structural racism, where and how we can interfere with the process, and then looking at it from the top down, and also recognizing, especially since we're here today with the Guild report, that the showrunners truly are on the front line.
Whenever you talk about problems as entrenched as this one, rarely is there any silver bullet. Typically, you're talking about a multi-frontal struggle where you're coming at it from every direction.
And I also think that, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about, you know, how do you change things, and I know that the Guild sponsors some dinners for showrunners, and they're planning to do it again, and I think that maybe they have to, Kim will have to incorporate with Patrick and the others who sort of put it together, you know, a presentation, at least to start this, so that you're really hitting everybody at the same time.
In short, the report concludes that business as usual practices in the industry have been wholly inadequate for addressing the lack of diversity among writers. It calls for a new approach to diversity that establishes clear goals, reasonable timetables, and effective mechanisms. Thank you.